The golden envelope slipped from my trembling fingers and fluttered to the kitchen floor like a dying butterfly. For a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I'd just discovered inside that beautiful embossed invitation that had arrived addressed to my sister-in-law, not me. My 8-year-old daughter Emma's name had been carefully deliberately erased from the guest list for her own cousin's birthday party. In its place, written in elegant calligraphy, were the words "adults-only event," as if my precious girl was some kind of inconvenience to be discarded. But what shattered me wasn't just the exclusion, it was the realization that this wasn't an oversight or a mistake. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. This was calculated cruelty, and I was about to discover just how deep the rabbit hole of family betrayal could go. I'm Sarah Mitchell, 34 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was and where I belonged in this world. I'm a freelance graphic designer who works from home, which allows me to be present for my daughter Emma in ways my own mother never was for me. I met my husband Daniel 7 years ago at a coffee shop downtown where I was sketching logos and he was grading papers as a high school history teacher. We fell in love over shared dreams of creating a family built on honesty, respect, and unconditional love. When Emma came into our lives 5 years later, I thought we'd achieved that dream. She's everything bright and beautiful about this world, with Daniel's thoughtful brown eyes and my stubborn streak that shows up whenever she's passionate about something. Emma loves dinosaurs, refuses to wear anything that isn't purple or green, and has this laugh that can fill an entire room with joy. She's the kind of kid who befriends the lonely kid at school and shares her lunch without being asked. We live in a modest 2-story house in Maplewood, a quiet suburb where neighbors still wave to each other and kids ride their bikes until the streetlights come on. It's the kind of place where I thought Emma would grow up feeling safe and valued. The kind of place where family meant something real and lasting. Daniel's family has always been what I call aggressively normal on the surface. His parents, Robert and Linda Carver, live in the expensive part of town in a house that looks like it belongs in a magazine. Linda volunteers at the country club and organizes charity galas, while Robert runs a successful accounting firm that's been in the family for 3 generations. They have 2 sons, Daniel and his older brother Marcus, who followed in Robert's footsteps and now manages the family business. Marcus married Vivian Hartwell 5 years ago, in what Linda still refers to as the wedding of the century. Vivian comes from old money, the kind of family where your ancestors' portraits hang in the local museum and streets are named after your great-great-grandfather. She's blonde, polished, and has never worked a day in her life because, as she once explained to me at a family dinner, some people are meant to create beauty in the world, not labor. They have twin boys, Jackson and Cooper, who just turned 6. This party, the one Emma was so carefully excluded from, was supposed to be their elaborate birthday celebration. When the invitation first arrived a month ago, Emma had been thrilled. She'd already picked out presents and asked me to help her make homemade birthday cards because she wanted them to be extra special. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 weeks ago during what should have been a routine family dinner at Robert and Linda's house. These gatherings happen every month, a tradition Linda established when the boys were born to maintain family bonds. Usually they're pleasant enough affairs, though I often feel like I'm performing in a play where everyone knows their lines except me. That particular evening started normally. Emma was playing with Jackson and Cooper in the backyard, while the adults sat on the patio, watching them run around the elaborate playground equipment Robert had installed last summer. The boys were showing Emma their new treehouse, and her delighted squeals carried across the yard as she climbed up the rope ladder. "She's so fearless," Vivian commented, though something in her tone made it sound less like a compliment and more like a concern. "I worry about children who don't understand boundaries." I glanced at Daniel, but he was engrossed in conversation with Marcus about some client issue at the firm. "Emma's just confident," I replied carefully. "She's always been good at making friends." Linda set down her wine glass with a little more force than necessary. "Speaking of the children, Sarah, we need to discuss something important about Jackson and Cooper's party." The shift in her tone made my stomach tighten. This wasn't going to be about decorations or party favors. "Of course, what do you need help with?" Well, Linda began, exchanging a look with Vivian that I couldn't quite interpret. We've been thinking about the guest list, and we've decided to make some changes to ensure the party runs smoothly. Vivian leaned forward, her perfectly manicured hands clasped in her lap. The thing is, Sarah, we've realized that 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds don't really play well together. The developmental gap is just too significant. I felt my eyebrows furrow. Emma gets along great with the boys. She's been looking forward to this party for weeks. Oh, we know she means well, Linda said in that patronizing tone she uses when she thinks she's being diplomatic. But Emma can be quite overwhelming for younger children. She's very energetic, very loud, and the boys have mentioned feeling a bit overshadowed when she's around. The words hit me like a physical blow. Overshadowed, she's just enthusiastic. And she adores Jackson and Cooper. Robert cleared his throat, a signal that he was about to deliver what he considered the final word on the matter. We've given this a lot of thought, Sarah, and we think it would be best if Emma didn't attend this particular celebration. Nothing personal, of course. Just what's best for the birthday boys. I looked around the table, waiting for someone to acknowledge how ridiculous this was. Daniel was still talking with Marcus, apparently oblivious to the conversation happening right beside him. When I tried to catch his eye, he just smiled and nodded at something Marcus was saying about quarterly reports. You're uninviting my daughter from her cousin's birthday party, I said slowly, making sure I understood correctly. We're not uninviting her, Vivian corrected with a tight smile. She was never officially invited. We just mentioned it in passing, and perhaps there was some confusion. But I remembered clearly. Linda had specifically told Emma about the party during our last visit, going into detail about the princess theme and the bounce house they were planning to rent. Emma had talked about nothing else for days. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Emma is family. Of course she should be at her cousin's party. Linda's smile became strained. Family doesn't always mean everyone has to be included in everything, dear. Sometimes what's best for the group means making difficult decisions. That's when Daniel finally tuned into our conversation. What difficult decisions? He asked, looking between us with confused concern. Before I could explain, Vivian jumped in. We were just telling Sarah that we've decided to keep Jackson and Cooper's party small this year. Just immediate family and a few school friends. Daniel nodded easily. That makes sense. Birthday parties can get overwhelming when they're too big. I stared at my husband in disbelief. Daniel, they're excluding Emma. I'm sure that's not what they meant, he said, but there was something in his tone that suggested he didn't want to dig deeper into this topic. Right, Mom? Linda reached over and patted Daniel's hand. Of course not, sweetheart. Sarah's just misunderstanding our planning process. And that was it. The conversation moved on to other topics while I sat there feeling like I'd been slapped. Emma was still playing happily in the yard, completely unaware that her own family had just deemed her unworthy of inclusion. The drive home that night was tense. Emma chattered excitedly about the party from the back seat, describing all the games she wanted to play with her cousins. Daniel was quiet, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. We need to talk about what happened tonight, I said once Emma was in bed. Daniel sighed, loosening his tie. They're not trying to hurt anyone, Sarah. Maybe they just want a smaller celebration this year. They specifically said Emma was too overwhelming for the boys. They called her loud and attention-seeking. They didn't say attention-seeking. They implied it. And you just sat there. Daniel turned to face me, and for the first time in our relationship, I saw something that looked almost like resentment in his eyes. What did you want me to do? Start a fight with my family over a birthday party? I wanted you to defend your daughter. Emma will survive missing one party. The casualness of his response stunned me. This isn't about surviving, Daniel. This is about the message we're sending to Emma about her worth, about her place in this family. But Daniel had already turned away, heading upstairs with the clear intention of ending the conversation. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, Sarah. They're good people who want what's best for everyone. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction I'd had with Daniel's family over the past 7 years. Were there signs I'd missed? Moments when their politeness had masked something darker? I thought about Emma's face when Linda had talked about the party, how her eyes had lit up with pure joy and anticipation. The next few days passed in a strange, tense normalcy. Daniel went to work, I managed my client projects, and Emma continued her countdown to the party that she didn't know she was no longer invited to. Every time she mentioned it, I felt like someone was twisting a knife in my chest. Then exactly 1 week after that dinner, the golden envelope arrived. I was working in my home office when the mail truck pulled up. Emma was at school, and Daniel was teaching his afternoon classes, so I was alone when I walked out to collect the mail. Mixed in with the usual bills and advertisements was that beautiful golden envelope, addressed in elegant calligraphy to the Carver family. My heart sank as soon as I saw it. This was the official invitation to Jackson and Cooper's party, the one that would make Emma's exclusion undeniably real. For a moment I considered hiding it, pretending it never arrived. But I knew that would only delay the inevitable conversation. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. The invitation inside was a work of art, printed on heavy cardstock with gold foil details. It featured a whimsical illustration of a castle surrounded by knights and dragons, with elegant script announcing the celebration for Prince Jackson and Prince Cooper Carver on Saturday, March 15th, from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Maplewood Country Club. But it was the guest list that made my blood run cold. There, printed in the same beautiful calligraphy, were the names of the attendees: the Robert Carver family, the Marcus Carver family, the Daniel Carver family, excluding children under 10, the Thompson family, the Williams family, excluding children under 10. The phrase jumped off the page like a slap. Not adults only. Not no children. Specifically excluding children under 10, which meant excluding Emma, while allowing Jackson and Cooper's school friends, all of whom were 6 years old. I read it again, then again, hoping the words would somehow change. But they remained the same, a clear and deliberate statement that my daughter was unwelcome at her own cousin's celebration. That's when the envelope slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the familiar comfort of our daily life, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't about a birthday party anymore. This was about respect, about family loyalty, about the kind of people I wanted Emma to think she could trust. I thought about Daniel's reaction the week before, how quickly he dismissed my concerns, and shut down any discussion of his family's behavior. I thought about Linda's patronizing smile, and Vivian's calculated cruelty disguised as concern for child development. I thought about Robert's dismissive pronouncement, delivered as if he were handing down a business decision, rather than breaking a little girl's heart. But mostly, I thought about Emma, about her bright smile and generous heart, about the way she'd been counting down the days to this party, about the presents she'd already wrapped, and the homemade cards she'd spent hours decorating with glitter and stickers. I picked up the invitation from the floor and read it one more time. Then I walked to my office, sat down at my computer, and began researching party planning companies in the Maplewood area. If my husband's family thought they could exclude my daughter without consequences, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Because I wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't going to smile and pretend everything was fine while they taught Emma that she was somehow less worthy of love and inclusion than her cousins. I was going to find out exactly who was behind this invitation, and then I was going to make sure everyone understood the true cost of their cruelty. The first number I called was Enchanted Events, a high-end party planning company that specialized in children's celebrations. The woman who answered, Jennifer, had a warm voice and seemed genuinely interested in helping. When I explained that I was trying to track down information about a specific event, I'm calling about a party for the Carver twins on March 15th, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I received an invitation, but there seems to be some confusion about the guest list. Oh yes, the medieval castle theme at the country club, Jennifer responded immediately. That's one of our premium packages. Beautiful event, though I have to say, the client had some very specific requests about the attendees. My pulse quickened. What kind of specific requests? There was a pause, and I could hear Jennifer typing on her computer. Well, I probably shouldn't be discussing client details, but since you received an invitation, the client was very clear about wanting to exclude certain family members. She mentioned something about protecting the birthday children from disruptive influences.
Mrs.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Vivian Carver. She's been our point of contact for all the planning. Lovely woman, very organized, though she did have some unusual concerns about family dynamics. I gripped the phone tighter. What kind of concerns? She mentioned that there was a family member whose child might overshadow the birthday boys. She wanted to ensure that Jackson and Cooper would be the center of attention without any, how did she put it, competitive elements. The words hit me like a physical blow. Competitive elements. That's how Vivian saw my 8-year-old daughter. Not as a beloved family member, not as a cousin who adored her little relatives, but as competition to be eliminated. Did she give you specific instructions about the guest list? I asked. Oh yes, very detailed. She provided a list of approved guests and a separate list of people who should not be invited under any circumstances. She was particularly emphatic about one family having a young daughter who shouldn't be included. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. Thank you for your time, Jennifer. Is everything all right? You sound upset. Just sorting out some family confusion, I managed. Have a good day. I hung up and sat staring at the phone, trying to process what I'd just learned. This wasn't a group decision made for the boys' benefit. This was Vivian's personal vendetta against Emma, carefully orchestrated and deliberately cruel. And somehow she'd convinced the entire family to go along with it. The second call I made was to Delightful Decorations, the company handling the venue setup. The owner, Patricia, was less forthcoming with details, but she did confirm that the event was being planned with very specific age restrictions in mind. The client wanted to ensure a sophisticated atmosphere, Patricia explained. She mentioned that young children might not appreciate the medieval theme and could potentially damage some of the more expensive decorations. What kind of decorations require age restrictions? I asked, genuinely curious about how Vivian had justified this decision. Well, we're bringing in some antique-style pieces, replica medieval artifacts, that sort of thing. Nothing that couldn't handle normal child interaction, but the client seemed very concerned about liability. Another excuse. Another carefully constructed justification for excluding Emma specifically while including children the same age as Jackson and Cooper. My third call was to the country club itself. I spoke with Maria, the events coordinator, who confirmed the booking and provided some interesting additional details. Mrs. Carver has been very involved in the planning process, Maria told me. She's called multiple times to discuss the guest list and seating arrangements. She seemed particularly concerned about managing family dynamics during the event. Managing family dynamics. She mentioned that there might be some tension if certain family members attended. She wanted to ensure a harmonious celebration for the birthday children. I thanked Maria and hung up, my head spinning with the implications of what I'd learned. This wasn't about Emma being too energetic or the boys feeling overshadowed. This was about Vivian deliberately creating division within Daniel's family, and she'd somehow convinced everyone else to participate in her scheme. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just at Vivian, but at Linda for enabling this behavior, at Robert for backing it up, and especially at Daniel for refusing to see what was really happening. I spent the rest of the afternoon making more calls, speaking with the catering company, the entertainment coordinator, and even the photographer. Each conversation revealed more details about Vivian's specific instructions to exclude certain family members, always couched in language about protecting the birthday boys or maintaining a certain atmosphere. By the time Emma came home from school, I had built a complete picture of the conspiracy against my daughter. It was methodical, it was calculated, and it was designed to isolate Emma from her extended family while making it seem like a reasonable parenting decision. "Mommy, are you okay?" Emma asked as she dropped her backpack by the door. "You look sad." I knelt down to her level, looking into those beautiful brown eyes that reflected so much trust and innocence. How could I explain that her own family had decided she wasn't worth including? How could I protect her from the pain of rejection while still addressing the underlying cruelty? "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug. "How was school today?" "Good. We learned about castles in history class, and I told Mrs. Peterson about Jackson and Cooper's party. She said it sounds really fun." Emma's face lit up with excitement. Only 12 more days. My heart shattered all over again. Emma was still counting down to a party she would never attend, still excited about celebrating with cousins who apparently didn't want her there. That evening, I waited until Emma was asleep before confronting Daniel with what I'd discovered. He was grading papers at the kitchen table when I sat down across from him with the invitation and a notepad filled with information from my phone calls. "We need to talk," I said, placing the invitation between us. Daniel glanced at it briefly, then back at his papers. "I told you, Sarah, it's just one party. Emma will be fine. This isn't about Emma being fine. This is about your family deliberately excluding her from a celebration that should include all the grandchildren. You're being dramatic." I opened my notepad and began reading from my notes. "I spoke with the party planner today. Vivian specifically requested that certain family members be excluded from the guest list. She described Emma as a disruptive influence and a competitive element." Daniel's pen stopped moving across the paper. "You called the party planner." "I called everyone involved in planning this event. The decorators, the caterers, the venue coordinator, want to know what I found out." For the first time since this whole situation began, Daniel looked genuinely concerned. "Sarah, you can't just start calling vendors and interrogating them about family events. Watch me." I leaned forward, meeting his gaze directly. "Your sister-in-law has orchestrated an elaborate scheme to exclude our daughter from a family celebration, and she's convinced everyone else to go along with it by pretending it's about child development and party management." Daniel set down his pen and rubbed his temples. "Even if that's true, what do you want me to do about it? The invitations are already sent. The party is planned. I want you to care. I want you to be as angry about this as I am. I want you to call your brother and demand an explanation." "And then what?" "We force them to include Emma at a party where she's not wanted. That's not going to make things better for anyone." I stared at my husband, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in our marriage. "You really don't see the problem, do you? I see you creating drama where none needs to exist. Our daughter has been systematically excluded from her own family, and you think I'm creating drama." Daniel stood up abruptly, gathering his papers. "I'm going to finish grading upstairs. When you're ready to have a rational conversation about this, let me know." As he walked away, I felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, but my faith in the man I'd married and the family I thought we'd built together. Daniel wasn't just failing to defend Emma, he was actively choosing his birth family's comfort over his daughter's well-being. That night, lying alone in bed while Daniel graded papers in his study, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't going to teach Emma that she should accept being treated as less than by people who were supposed to love her. I was going to fight back, and I was going to make sure everyone understood the true cost of their cruelty. The next morning, after Daniel left for work and Emma went to school, I sat down at my computer and began crafting a plan. If Vivian could orchestrate an elaborate scheme to exclude my daughter, then I could orchestrate an equally elaborate response to expose the truth about what was really happening. I started by documenting everything. I wrote down every conversation, every slight, every moment when Emma had been made to feel less than welcome by Daniel's family. I compiled recordings of my phone calls with the vendors, carefully noting the specific language they'd used to describe Vivian's instructions. Then I began researching. I looked up articles about family dynamics, emotional manipulation, and the psychological impact of exclusion on children. I found expert opinions about the importance of inclusive family celebrations and the damage that can be done when children are singled out for rejection. But most importantly, I started reaching out to other family members. I called Daniel's Aunt Margaret, who lived across the country but maintained close relationships with everyone. I contacted his cousin Rebecca, who had her own complicated history with the family dynamics. I even reached out to some family friends who had known the Carvers for decades. What I discovered during these conversations was that this pattern of exclusion and manipulation wasn't new. Vivian had been systematically isolating people and creating divisions within the family for years, always with Linda's implicit support and Robert's passive enablement. "I'm not surprised," Margaret told me during our hour-long phone conversation. "Vivian has always been territorial about family events. She did something similar when Rebecca's daughter graduated high school. Found a way to make the celebration all about Jackson and Cooper instead. Rebecca confirmed this when I spoke with her. Vivian has this way of making everything about her boys, while making other children feel invisible. And Linda just goes along with it because she's so desperate to maintain the peace. The more I learned, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't about Emma specifically, it was about Vivian's need to control family narratives and ensure that her children remained the center of attention at all times. Emma was just the latest victim in a long line of family members who had been pushed aside to serve Vivian's agenda. Armed with this information, I began formulating my response. I wasn't going to confront Vivian directly, and I wasn't going to put Daniel in the middle of a family war. Instead, I was going to do something that would force everyone to see the situation clearly and make their own moral choices. I was going to plan my own party for Emma on the same day as Jackson and Cooper's celebration. Not out of spite, but out of love. A party that would celebrate everything wonderful about my daughter while demonstrating the kind of inclusive, joyful family gathering that Emma deserved. And I was going to invite everyone. Every family member, every family friend, everyone who had received an invitation to the boys' party. I was going to give them a choice between exclusion and inclusion, between supporting Vivian's divisive agenda and standing up for what was right. The party I planned for Emma would be everything the boys' celebration was not. Where theirs was exclusive, ours would be welcoming. Where theirs was about maintaining social status, ours would be about genuine love and connection. Where theirs sent the message that some children matter more than others, ours would celebrate the inherent worth of every child. As I worked on the details, I felt a sense of purpose and clarity that had been missing since this whole situation began. I wasn't just planning a party, I was taking a stand for my daughter and for every child who had ever been made to feel unwanted by the people who should love them most. The invitations I designed were beautiful but simple, printed on recycled paper with hand-drawn illustrations that Emma and I created together. The message was straightforward. Join us in celebrating Emma Mitchell, a bright light who brings joy wherever she goes. Come as you are, bring your authentic selves, and let's show what real family love looks like. I scheduled our party for the same day as Jackson and Cooper's celebration, but at our house, instead of the country club. I planned activities that would appeal to children of all ages, from toddlers to teenagers. I arranged for face painting, a treasure hunt, and a craft station where kids could make their own medieval shields and crowns. Most importantly, I made sure that every detail of our celebration would demonstrate the values I wanted Emma to learn: inclusion, kindness, creativity, and the belief that every person has something valuable to contribute. The hardest part was keeping the planning secret from Emma while I waited for the right moment to reveal what was really happening with her cousin's party. I knew that conversation would be devastating for her, but I also knew it was necessary. She needed to understand that sometimes the people we love make choices that hurt us, and when that happens, we have the right to create our own joy. 2 weeks passed before I found the courage to tell Emma the truth. I had been rehearsing the conversation in my head, trying to find words that would protect her innocence while preparing her for the reality of human cruelty. The moment came on a rainy Thursday afternoon, when she bounded through the front door, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders as she ran straight to the kitchen calendar. Only 3 more days until the party, she announced, tracing her finger over the red circle I had drawn around March 15 weeks ago. I finished Jackson's card during art class today. Want to see? She pulled a homemade greeting card from her folder, decorated with carefully drawn knights and dragons in her favorite purple and green markers. Inside, she had written in her best cursive handwriting, "Happy birthday, Jackson. You're the best cousin ever. Love, Emma." A similar card for Cooper was tucked behind it. My throat tightened as I looked at those innocent cards, created with such love and anticipation. "Emma, sweetheart, come sit with me. We need to talk about something important." Her smile faltered slightly as she noticed my serious tone. "Am I in trouble?"
No, baby, you're not in trouble at all. I patted the couch beside me, and she climbed up, tucking her legs under her in that way children do when they sense adult conversations coming. "It's about Jackson and Cooper's party." Emma's eyes brightened again. "Did you finish my dress? I know you've been working on it in secret." I had been making her a special dress for the party,
a medieval-inspired creation with flowing sleeves and intricate embroidery. Now it hung in my closet like a beautiful reminder of dreams that would never come to pass. Emma, I need you to listen carefully. There's been a change with the party plans. Are we going early? Did they move the time? No, sweetheart. I took her small hands in mine, feeling their warmth and the slight stickiness that always seemed to cling to 8-year-old fingers. We're not going to Jackson and Cooper's party. The confusion on her face was immediate and complete. What do you mean? Of course we're going, it's their birthday. I know this is hard to understand, but sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't seem fair. Jackson and Cooper's mommy decided that she wanted their party to be different this year. Different how? I searched for words that would convey the truth without destroying her faith in family love. She decided that only certain people could come to the party, and we weren't included in those certain people. Emma stared at me for a long moment, processing this information with the serious concentration she usually reserved for math homework. But I'm their cousin. Cousins always come to birthday parties. You're absolutely right. Cousins should always be welcome at family celebrations. So there's been a mistake. Should we call Grandma Linda and tell her? The hope in her voice nearly broke my resolve. How could I explain that Grandma Linda knew exactly what was happening and had chosen to support it? There hasn't been a mistake, Emma. This was a choice that the grown-ups made. But why? The question came out as barely a whisper. Why wouldn't they want me there? I pulled her into my arms, feeling her small body tremble against mine. It has nothing to do with you, baby girl. Nothing at all. Some people make choices that are about their own feelings, not about the wonderful person you are. Did I do something wrong? I can apologize. I can be better. Those words hit me like a physical blow. My 8-year-old daughter was already trying to take responsibility for adult cruelty, already believing that she could somehow earn love by changing herself. Emma Mitchell, you listen to me right now. You are perfect exactly as you are. You are kind and funny and smart and creative. You are everything good in this world, and anyone who doesn't see that is missing out on knowing someone truly special. She cried, then quiet tears that slipped down her cheeks as she processed the first real rejection of her young life. I held her and let her grieve, knowing that this moment would shape how she understood family loyalty and unconditional love for years to come. When her tears finally subsided, she pulled back and looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Are Daddy's feelings hurt too? The question revealed a level of emotional intelligence that amazed me. Even in her own pain, she was thinking about how this might affect others. Daddy has some complicated feelings about this situation, I said carefully. Is he sad that we can't go? I thought about Daniel's reaction over the past 2 weeks, how he had continued to minimize the situation and avoid any meaningful discussion about what his family had done. I think Daddy is trying not to think about it too much because it makes him uncomfortable. Emma nodded as if this made perfect sense to her. Children often understand emotional avoidance better than adults give them credit for. What are we going to do instead? Well, funny you should ask. I reached behind the couch cushion where I had hidden the invitation I had been working on for days. I thought we might have our own celebration. Her eyes widened as she took the handmade invitation. The cover featured one of her own drawings that I had carefully transferred and colored, showing a group of children playing together under a rainbow. Inside, written in colorful markers, was the invitation to Emma's friendship celebration at our house on March 15th. A party for me, she asked, wonder replacing the sadness in her voice. A party for you, where everyone who loves you can come together and celebrate the amazing person you are. She studied the invitation carefully, running her fingers over the drawing. Can I invite my friends from school? Absolutely. Anyone you want to invite is welcome. What about Jackson and Cooper? Are they invited too? The question demonstrated the generosity of spirit that made Emma so special. Even after being excluded by their family, her first instinct was still inclusion. Of course they're invited. And their parents and Grandma Linda and Grandpa Robert, and anyone else from the family who wants to come. But they probably won't come because they'll be at their own party. Probably not, I agreed. But that's okay. The people who come to your party will be there because they want to celebrate you. Over the next 2 days, Emma and I worked together to plan her celebration. We decided on a friendship around the world theme, where each activity would represent a different culture and way of celebrating. We planned to make friendship bracelets from South America,
paint traditional patterns from Africa, create origami from Japan, and dance to music from Ireland. Emma wanted to invite her entire third-grade class, her teacher Mrs. Peterson, our neighbors, and every family member she could think of. I helped her write the invitations by hand, each one personalized with a small drawing and a note about why that person was special to her. The invitation to Jackson and Cooper was particularly heartfelt. Dear Jackson and Cooper, I hope you have the most wonderful birthday ever. I know you'll be busy with your own party, but if you want to come celebrate friendship with me too, I would be so happy to see you. Love, your cousin Emma. When we delivered the invitation to Linda and Robert's house, I left it in their mailbox without going to the door. I wasn't ready for another confrontation, and I wanted the invitation to speak for itself. The response from Emma's school friends was immediate and enthusiastic. Mrs. Peterson called that evening to tell me how touched she was by Emma's invitation and to ask if there was anything she could bring to help with the celebration. Our neighbors, an elderly couple named Frank and Betty who had watched Emma grow up, were delighted to be included. The family responses were more complicated. Margaret, Daniel's aunt, called me directly after receiving her invitation. "Sarah, I think what you're doing is wonderful," she said. "I've already booked my flight. I wouldn't miss Emma's celebration for the world." Rebecca, Daniel's cousin, sent a long email explaining that she would be driving down with her teenage daughter specifically to attend Emma's party. "It's time someone in this family stood up for what's right," she wrote. But the silence from Linda, Robert, Marcus, and Vivian was deafening. No phone calls, no acknowledgements, no responses at all. It was as if Emma's invitation had disappeared into a black hole of family politics. Daniel's reaction to the party planning was a mixture of admiration and concern. "I think it's great that you're doing something special for Emma," he said one evening as we prepared dinner together. "But I'm worried about the timing." "What do you mean?" "Having it on the same day as Jackson and Cooper's party feels intentionally confrontational." I stopped chopping vegetables and turned to face him. "Would you prefer I schedule it for a different day so that everyone can attend both parties?" "Well, no, but because that was my original plan. I was going to schedule Emma's party for the weekend before, as a way of celebrating her without directly competing with the boys' celebration. But then I realized something." Daniel waited for me to continue. "If I schedule our party for a different day, I'm sending the message that Emma's celebration is less important than theirs. I'm teaching her that she should step aside and make room for other people's priorities, even when those people have treated her cruelly. I just don't want this to create more family drama." "The drama already exists, Daniel. I didn't create it by planning a party for my daughter. Vivian created it when she decided Emma wasn't worthy of inclusion in a family celebration." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. We finished preparing dinner in tense silence. That night, after Emma went to bed, I found Daniel in his study grading papers with unusual intensity. "Can we talk?" I asked. He looked up from his desk, and I saw exhaustion in his eyes that went beyond the normal fatigue of teaching high school students. "What do you want to talk about?" "I want to understand why you're not angry about what your family did to Emma." Daniel set down his pen and rubbed his temples. "I am angry, Sarah. I just don't see the point in making the situation worse." "How exactly would standing up for your daughter make the situation worse?" "Because once you start a war with family, it never really ends. There are always consequences, always lasting damage." I sat down across from his desk, studying my husband's face in the lamplight. "What are you afraid of, Daniel?" "I'm afraid of losing my family." "You mean your parents and Marcus?" "I mean the whole structure of it. The Sunday dinners, the holiday traditions, the sense of belonging somewhere. Emma will grow up and move away someday, but my family is supposed to be forever." His words revealed a fundamental difference in how we understood family loyalty. "What about the family we created together? What about Emma's sense of belonging?" "That's different." "How is it different?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment, staring at the papers scattered across his desk. "My family has always been complicated, but they're still my family. Emma will have other friends, other connections. She doesn't need my parents' approval to feel good about herself, but she needs her father's protection. I am protecting her. I'm protecting her from being caught in the middle of adult conflicts that she doesn't understand." "No, Daniel, You're teaching her that family loyalty flows in only one direction. You're showing her that she should accept being treated poorly by people who are supposed to love her. Our conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the study door. Emma stood in the doorway in her pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed dinosaur. "I can't sleep," she said quietly. Daniel immediately softened, opening his arms to her. "Come here, little bird." Emma climbed into his lap, settling against his chest with the easy comfort of a child who has never doubted her father's love. "I keep thinking about Jackson and Cooper's party," she said. "Are you excited about your own party?" Daniel asked, smoothing her hair. "Yes, but I'm also sad. I keep wondering if they'll miss me at their party." Daniel looked at me over Emma's head, and I saw something shift in his expression. Maybe it was seeing his daughter's innocent sadness, or maybe it was finally understanding the emotional weight of what his family had done. "Emma," he said gently, "I want you to know that you are the most important person in my world. If anyone doesn't see how special you are, that's their loss. Do you think Jackson and Cooper wanted me at their party, even if their mommy said no?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "I think Jackson and Cooper love you very much, and they probably don't understand why you can't be at their party. Maybe after their party is over we can have a play date with just us cousins. Maybe we can arrange that." Daniel agreed though. His tone suggested he wasn't entirely sure how such an arrangement would work given the current family dynamics. After we tucked Emma back into bed, Daniel and I returned to his study. "She's handling this better than I expected," he said. "She's handling it with more grace than most of the adults involved."
Daniel nodded, looking thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about family loyalty flowing in only one direction. Maybe you're right. Maybe I've been so focused on maintaining peace that I've forgotten what I'm actually supposed to be protecting." It was the first sign that Daniel might be beginning to understand the deeper implications of what was happening. "What changed your mind?" "Seeing Emma just now, hearing her worry about whether her cousins will miss her. She's still thinking about their feelings even after they excluded her from their celebration. That level of generosity doesn't come from nowhere. She learned it from watching how families are supposed to treat each other. And from watching how they actually treat each other apparently." The next morning brought an unexpected development. I was in my office working on client projects when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Sarah Mitchell?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional but warm. "Yes, this is Sarah. My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm a reporter with the Maplewood Gazette. I received some information about an unusual family situation involving a children's birthday party, and I was wondering if you might be willing to speak with me." My stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, what kind of information?" "Someone contacted our newsroom about a story involving deliberate exclusion of a child from a family celebration. They mentioned that there might be a pattern of this behavior within a prominent local family." I closed my eyes, trying to think of who might have reached out to the media. "I'm not sure I'm comfortable discussing private family matters with a reporter." "I understand your hesitation, but the person who contacted us felt that this story might shine a light on some important issues about family dynamics and child welfare. They specifically mentioned that you had planned an alternative celebration as a way of demonstrating inclusive family values." "Who contacted you?" "I can't reveal my source, but I can tell you that they seemed very concerned about the psychological impact this kind of exclusion might have on children." I spent the rest of the conversation deflecting Jennifer's questions while trying to figure out who might have gone to the media with our story. By the time I hung up, I was fairly certain it had been either Margaret or Rebecca, both of whom had expressed strong feelings about the family's treatment of Emma. The possibility of media attention added a new layer of complexity to an already difficult situation. I wasn't interested in publicly shaming Daniel's family, but I also wasn't going to lie to protect people who had deliberately hurt my daughter. When Daniel came home that evening, I told him about the reporter's call. His reaction was immediate and intense. "Someone called the newspaper about this?" he asked, his voice rising with panic. "Apparently someone feels strongly enough about what happened to Emma that they think it's a matter of public interest. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Now it's going to be everywhere, and my family is going to be humiliated." "Your family humiliated themselves when they decided to exclude an 8-year-old from a birthday party. Sarah, you have to call that reporter back and tell her there's no story." "Why would I do that?" Because this affects all of us. Emma doesn't need to be in the newspaper because of family drama. I studied my husband's face, seeing the fear and embarrassment there. What exactly are you afraid people will learn about your family, Daniel? I just want to protect everyone involved. Including the people who hurt our daughter. Including our daughter who doesn't need to become a poster child for family dysfunction. That night, I lay awake thinking about Daniel's reaction to the possibility of public scrutiny. His immediate instinct had been to protect his birth family's reputation rather than to support accountability for their actions. It was becoming increasingly clear that Daniel and I had very different ideas about loyalty, protection, and moral responsibility. The next day was Friday, the day before both Emma's celebration and Jackson and Cooper's party. Emma was vibrating with excitement as we made final preparations for her Friendship Around the World party. She helped me hang colorful streamers from different countries around our backyard and arrange activity stations for each cultural celebration we had planned. "How many people do you think will come?" she asked, as we set up the origami station. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. But however many come, we're going to have an amazing time celebrating you. Even if it's just you and me and Daddy. Even if it's just you and me and Daddy." But I was hopeful that more people would attend than just our immediate family. The responses from Emma's school friends and teacher had been overwhelmingly positive, and I knew that Margaret and Rebecca were planning to be there. Frank and Betty from next door had already dropped off a homemade cake with Happy Friendship Day Emma, written in pink frosting. That afternoon, while Emma was at her friend Sophie's house for a playdate, I received an unexpected phone call from Linda. "Sarah, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "I'm listening. I understand that you're upset about the party situation, but this has gone too far." "What specifically has gone too far?" "Reporters calling, family members taking sides, creating drama where none needed to exist. This is supposed to be about celebrating Jackson and Cooper's birthday, not about making some kind of political statement." I felt my temper rise at her dismissive tone. "Linda, my daughter was deliberately excluded from a family celebration. I didn't create this situation. Emma is a lovely child, but sometimes difficult decisions have to be made for the good of everyone involved." "Whose good exactly?" "Because it certainly wasn't for Emma's good. The birthday boys deserve to have their special day without complications." "And what complications exactly does my 8-year-old daughter present?" There was a pause, and I could almost hear Linda choosing her words carefully. "Emma can be quite energetic. And sometimes children that age don't understand appropriate behavior at formal events. This is a 6-year-old's birthday party, Linda. Not a state dinner. Vivian has put a lot of effort into planning this celebration and she wants it to be perfect for her boys. Perfect meaning without my daughter. Perfect meaning without unnecessary stress or conflict." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm despite the fury building in my chest. "Linda, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Emma is your granddaughter. She loves Jackson and Cooper, and she has never done anything to deserve being excluded from their celebration. The message you're sending to her is that she doesn't matter as much as other children in this family. That's not the message we're sending." "Then what message are you sending?" Another pause. "We're sending the message that sometimes adults have to make difficult choices. You're sending the message that love is conditional and that family loyalty only flows in one direction. Sarah, I'm calling to ask you to reconsider having your party tomorrow. It's going to create an uncomfortable situation for everyone." "Uncomfortable for who?" "For the family members who feel caught in the middle." "You mean the family members who will have to choose between supporting inclusion and supporting exclusion?" "I mean the family members who love everyone involved and don't want to see this conflict escalate." I realized that Linda was essentially asking me to cancel Emma's celebration to make things easier for people who had chosen to exclude her in the first place. "Linda, I'm not canceling my daughter's party. Anyone who wants to celebrate Emma's wonderful heart and generous spirit is welcome to join us. Anyone who prefers to support excluding children from family events is welcome to make that choice too. You're forcing people to pick sides." "No, Linda. Vivian forced people to pick sides when she decided Emma wasn't worthy of inclusion. I'm just giving them an alternative option." I hung up feeling both angry and sad. Linda's call had confirmed that Daniel's family viewed Emma's celebration not as a loving response to exclusion, but as a deliberate attack on their choices.
They were more concerned about being made to look bad than they were about the impact of their actions on an 8-year-old child. That evening, Daniel came home from work looking stressed and exhausted. "My mother called me today," he said as soon as he walked through the door. "I figured she might. She's really upset about tomorrow." "I imagine she is. Sarah, she asked me to talk to you about canceling Emma's party." I stopped what I was doing and turned to face him. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that Emma's party isn't negotiable." Relief flooded through me. "You did?" "I also told her that if she's uncomfortable with the situation, maybe she should think about why that is." It was the first time since this whole situation began that Daniel had clearly chosen our family over his birth family's comfort. How did she respond to that? She hung up on me. Emma chose that moment to come running downstairs, her face bright with excitement about the next day's celebration. "Daddy, did you see all the decorations we put up? Come look." She grabbed Daniel's hand and dragged him toward the backyard, chattering excitedly about all the activities we had planned. As I watched them together, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe our family would emerge from this crisis stronger and more united than before. The evening passed peacefully as we made final preparations for Emma's party. She laid out her special dress, the medieval-inspired creation I had made for Jackson and Cooper's party, but which would now debut at her own celebration. She arranged her friendship bracelet supplies and practiced folding origami cranes. Just before bedtime, as I was tucking her in, Emma looked up at me with serious eyes. "Mommy, do you think anyone from Daddy's family will come to my party?" "I don't know, sweetheart. But I know that everyone who comes will be there because they love you and want to celebrate the amazing person you are." "What if Jackson and Cooper don't come because their mommy says they can't?" "Then we'll miss them, but we'll still have a wonderful time with the people who do come." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe someday we can all have a party together again." Her optimism and capacity for forgiveness amazed me. Even after everything that had happened, she still held hope for family reconciliation and inclusion. "Maybe we can, baby girl. Maybe we can." As I turned off her light and closed her door, I realized that tomorrow would be more than just a birthday party. It would be a test of values, a declaration of principles, and possibly a turning point in our family's story. Whatever happened, I was ready to face it with the same courage and grace that Emma had shown throughout this entire ordeal. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect spring day that seemed designed for celebration. I woke early to find Emma already up, sitting by her bedroom window in her pajamas, watching the world wake up with her. "Is today really here?" she asked when she saw me in the doorway. "Today is really here, my love." She bounced off the window seat and threw her arms around my waist. "I dreamed that everyone came to my party and we all danced together in the backyard." "That sounds like a beautiful dream." The morning passed in a whirlwind of activity as we set up the final details for Emma's Friendship Around the World celebration. Daniel surprised me by taking charge of the music setup, creating playlists for each cultural station we had planned. He seemed lighter somehow, as if his conversation with his mother had lifted a weight from his shoulders. At 11:30, an hour before our party was scheduled to begin, a black sedan pulled into our driveway. My heart skipped when I recognized Margaret stepping out of the passenger seat, followed by a man I didn't immediately recognize. "Aunt Margaret," Emma squealed, running across the yard to launch herself into Margaret's arms. "There's my favorite girl," Margaret said, spinning Emma around before setting her down. "Emma, I'd like you to meet my friend James. He drove all the way here with me just to celebrate with you." James turned out to be Margaret's partner of 15 years. A gentle man with kind eyes who immediately won Emma over by asking thoughtful questions about the party activities she had planned. Within minutes, he was helping her adjust the height of the origami station and learning how to fold paper cranes. At exactly 12 o'clock, cars began arriving in earnest. Mrs. Peterson came with her teenage daughter, who volunteered to help with face painting. Sophie and her parents arrived with homemade cookies shaped like flags from different countries. More of Emma's classmates appeared with their families, until our modest backyard was filled with the cheerful chaos of children's laughter. Frank and Betty from next door came bearing not only their homemade cake, but also an elaborate photo booth they had constructed overnight, complete with props representing different cultures around the world. Every celebration needs memories. Betty explained as she helped Emma pose with a Japanese fan and a Mexican sombrero. By 12:30, I counted nearly 40 people in our backyard, all there specifically to celebrate Emma's friendship and kindness. The activity stations were bustling with children and adults working together on friendship bracelets, painted masks, and origami animals. The Irish music station had turned into an impromptu dance party, with Mrs. Peterson leading a group of third graders in what she called authentic Celtic steps.
Emma moved through it all like a ray of sunshine, helping younger children with their crafts, making sure everyone felt included, and beaming with joy at seeing so many people gathered in her honor. Watching her, I felt a fierce pride in the child we had raised, and the values she embodied even in the face of rejection. At 1 o'clock, just as we were preparing to serve lunch, another car pulled into our driveway. My breath caught when I saw Rebecca stepping out, followed by her teenage daughter Ashley. But my shock was complete when the third person to emerge was Katrina, Marcus's younger sister who lived 2 states away. "I hope we're not too late," Rebecca called as they approached the backyard gate. "We brought reinforcements." Katrina looked nervous but determined as she approached me. "Sarah, I hope it's okay that I came. Rebecca called me last night and told me what was happening. I couldn't let this continue without saying something." "Of course it's okay. Emma will be thrilled to see you," and she was. Emma's face lit up when she spotted Katrina, running over to give her the kind of enthusiastic hug that had once been deemed too overwhelming for family gatherings. "Aunt Katrina, I didn't know you were coming. I wouldn't miss celebrating you for anything," Katrina said, and I could hear genuine emotion in her voice. As the afternoon progressed, I noticed Katrina pulling me aside during a quiet moment. "Sarah, there are things about my family that you need to know. Things about Vivian, and how she operates." "What kind of things?" "She's done this before. The exclusion, the manipulation, the way she turns family members against each other. She did it to me when I was younger, made me feel like I didn't belong unless I followed her rules exactly." I felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. "How did she do it to you?" "Little things at first, comments about my clothes, my friends, my interests, then bigger things. She convinced my parents that I was too immature for family vacations, too disruptive for holiday gatherings. By the time I was a teenager, I was barely included in family events at all. How did you break free from it?" "I moved away for college and stayed away, built my own life, my own friendships, my own definition of family. But I've always regretted not standing up to her sooner, not protecting other people from going through what I went through." Katrina glanced toward Emma, who was teaching a group of children how to make friendship bracelets. When Rebecca told me what happened to Emma, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. That little girl doesn't deserve to be treated the way I was. "Does Marcus know you're here?" "Marcus is exactly where he's always been, caught between what's right and what's easy. But some of us are done choosing easy." At 2:30, I noticed a familiar car driving slowly past our house. It circled the block twice before finally parking across the street. I watched as Jackson and Cooper pressed their faces against the back window, staring at the celebration happening in our yard. The car sat there for nearly 10 minutes, while the boys watched Emma's party from a distance. I could see Vivian in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her face a mask of controlled fury. Finally the car pulled away, but not before Cooper managed to wave sadly at Emma through the rear window. Emma saw the wave, and immediately ran to the fence, calling Cooper, Jackson, but the car was already disappearing around the corner. "That was my cousin's," she told Ashley, Rebecca's daughter, with matter-of-fact sadness. "They're having their own party today, but I think they wanted to see mine too." Ashley, who was 17 and wise beyond her years, knelt down to Emma's level. "Sometimes grown-ups make it hard for kids to be friends, even when the kids really want to be. Maybe after today, their mommy will let them come play at my house again." "Maybe she will," Ashley agreed, though her tone suggested she understood the complexity of the situation better than Emma did. The afternoon continued with remarkable joy, despite the underlying sadness of family division. The friendship bracelet station became a massive collaboration, with children and adults working together to create a giant chain that eventually stretched across our entire backyard. The face painting evolved into a cultural exchange, with children sharing stories about their own family traditions, while getting painted with symbols from around the world. At 4 o'clock, as the party was beginning to wind down, one final surprise arrived. A delivery truck pulled up to our house, and a young woman emerged carrying an enormous bouquet of flowers and a wrapped gift. "Delivery for Emma Mitchell," she announced. Emma's eyes went wide as she accepted the flowers, which were almost as tall as she was. The attached card read, "To the most inclusive and kind-hearted girl we know. With love from all your friends at Maplewood Elementary School." The gift turned out to be from Mrs. Peterson's entire grade-level team, a beautiful art set with supplies from different countries around the world. "Your teacher told us about your party theme," the delivery woman explained. "The whole school wanted to contribute something special." As Emma opened the gift, surrounded by friends and chosen family, I felt tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but tears of overwhelming gratitude for the community that had rallied around my daughter when her blood family had failed her. Daniel appeared beside me, slipping his arm around my waist. "Look at her," he said softly. "Look how loved she is. She deserves all of this and more. She gets it from you, you know. This capacity to create love and connection wherever she goes. She learned that from watching you." As the last guests began to leave, each one making sure to tell Emma how much they had enjoyed celebrating with her, I felt a sense of completion that went beyond just throwing a successful party. We had demonstrated something important about the kind of family we wanted to be, the kind of values we wanted to live by. Frank and Betty were among the last to leave, and Frank pulled me aside as they gathered their photo booth supplies. "That little girl of yours has something special," he said. "The way she made sure every single child felt included today, the way she shared everything she had, the way she never once complained about the people who weren't here. That's character you can't teach. Thank you for being here for her. Thank you for showing us what real family looks like." After everyone had gone, and we had cleaned up the backyard, the three of us sat on our porch swing watching the sunset. Emma was exhausted but glowing, still wearing one of the flower crowns from the craft station and several friendship bracelets up and down her arms. "That was the best party ever," she declared, snuggling between Daniel and me. "What made it so special?" I asked. "Everyone was happy to be there. Nobody was pretending or being mean. Everyone just wanted to celebrate friendship." Her simple wisdom struck me as the perfect summary of what we had accomplished. We had created a space where love was unconditional, where inclusion was the default, where every person mattered simply because they existed. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, clutching one of her new art supplies, Daniel and I sat in our kitchen talking about the day. "I owe you an apology," he said suddenly. "For what?" "For not seeing this situation clearly from the beginning. For prioritizing keeping peace over protecting Emma. For making you fight this battle alone. You found your way to the right side eventually. But you shouldn't have had to convince me to defend my own daughter. That should have been automatic." I reached across the table and took his hand. "What matters is that you're here now. Emma needs to know that you'll always choose her well-being over family politics. She'll never have to doubt that again." The next morning brought an unexpected phone call from Jennifer Walsh, the reporter who had contacted me earlier in the week. "Mrs. Mitchell, I wanted to follow up with you about the story I was working on regarding family exclusion and children's birthday parties. Have you decided not to pursue it?" "Actually, quite the opposite. After speaking with several of your family members, and observing the response to your daughter's celebration yesterday, I think there's an important story here about how communities can support children who face rejection." I was surprised that she had observed Emma's party. "You were here yesterday." I was driving by and couldn't help but notice the celebration. The joy and inclusion I witnessed stood in stark contrast to what I'd been hearing about the other family event. "What exactly are you planning to write?" "A story about the power of chosen family and community support when traditional family structures fail children. Your daughter's party yesterday was a perfect example of how love and inclusion can triumph over exclusion and cruelty." The article appeared in the Maplewood Gazette the following Wednesday, accompanied by photos from Emma's celebration that Frank and Betty had provided. The headline read, "When Family Fails, Community Steps Up. Local Girls' Friendship Celebration Shows Power of Inclusion."
The article was fair and balanced, focusing more on the positive response to Emma's situation than on the specific details of her exclusion. It mentioned the unnamed prominent family, who had excluded a child from a birthday celebration, but it spent most of its energy describing the outpouring of community support for Emma's alternative party. The response to the article was immediate and overwhelming. Our phone rang constantly with calls from other parents, sharing similar stories of family exclusion and asking for advice on how to handle such situations. Emma's school principal called to commend us for demonstrating positive conflict resolution and asked if we would be willing to speak at a PTA meeting about building inclusive communities. Most surprisingly, we received calls from several members of Daniel's extended family who had been unaware of the situation until they read the article. Cousins, aunts, and uncles expressed outrage at Emma's treatment and shame that they hadn't been there to support her. Daniel's family's response was predictably dramatic. Linda called in tears, claiming that the article had ruined their reputation in the community. Robert demanded that we publish a retraction, insisting that the story was biased and unfair. Marcus, surprisingly, said nothing at all. But the most telling response came from Vivian herself, in the form of a scathing voicemail left on our home phone. "I hope you're proud of yourself for destroying this family over a child's birthday party," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "You've turned everyone against us and made it impossible for my children to show their faces in this community. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To punish us for making a reasonable decision about our own family celebration." The voicemail revealed everything I needed to know about Vivian's character and motivations. Even faced with the consequences of her actions, she remained focused on her own victimhood rather than considering the impact of her choices on Emma. 2 weeks after the article appeared, we received an unexpected visitor. Jackson and Cooper appeared at our front door with Marcus, all three of them looking nervous but determined. "Hi, Emma," Jackson said shyly when she answered the door. "We came to apologize." Emma's face lit up with genuine joy. "You don't need to apologize. Do you want to come play?" Cooper stepped forward, holding a handmade card. "We made this for you. We're sorry we couldn't come to your friendship party." The card featured a drawing of Emma surrounded by hearts and the words "best cousin ever" written in 6-year-old handwriting. Inside, they had written, "We love you, Emma. We're sorry we missed your party. Love, Jackson and Cooper." Marcus looked uncomfortable but resolute as he addressed me. "Sarah, I need to apologize too. What happened with the party invitation was wrong, and I should have stood up for Emma from the beginning." "Thank you for saying that, Marcus. Vivian and I are getting divorced," he said quietly, so the children couldn't hear. This situation was just the final straw in a long list of issues. The boys will be staying with me, and I want them to have a relationship with Emma without any artificial barriers. Over the following months, Jackson and Cooper became regular visitors to our house. Marcus made sure they attended every family gathering we hosted, and slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding the family connections that Vivian's manipulation had damaged. Daniel's relationship with his parents remained strained but not completely severed. Linda eventually apologized to Emma directly, though she never fully acknowledged the deeper implications of what she had enabled. Robert continued to maintain that the whole situation had been blown out of proportion, but he made an effort to include Emma more deliberately in family activities. The most meaningful change was in Daniel himself. The experience of nearly losing his daughter's trust had fundamentally shifted his understanding of family loyalty. He began setting clear boundaries with his parents about how Emma would be treated, and he never again prioritized keeping peace over protecting her well-being. A year later, Emma asked if she could have another friendship around the world party for her 9th birthday. But this time, she said, "I want to invite Jackson and Cooper and make sure they can actually come." The second annual friendship celebration was even larger than the first, with children from multiple schools and families from throughout our community. Jackson and Cooper were among the most enthusiastic participants, helping Emma teach other children the cultural activities we had developed. Watching Emma that day, surrounded by genuine love and authentic connection, I felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond just throwing a successful party. We had broken a cycle of exclusion and created something better in its place. We had shown Emma that love doesn't have to be conditional, that family can be chosen as well as inherited, and that standing up for what's right is always worth the cost. Most importantly, we had taught her that her worth doesn't depend on other people's approval, and that she has the power to create the kind of love and inclusion she wants to see in the world. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children isn't protection from life's disappointments, but the tools to transform those disappointments into opportunities for growth, connection, and positive change. Emma learned all of that from a birthday party invitation that never came, and from the celebration of love that replaced it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.